Today we're really going to focus on core vocabulary and aided language simulation or modeling in this presentation. So what is core vocabulary? It is a small set of words that are used frequently in communication and used across contexts and purposes. Generally, the statistic that most people throw out there is about 250 words make up 80% of what we say. And these core vocabulary boards and words, you can see some examples on the side over here in the pictures, but these are really those little building blocks of language. They are your pronouns, your verbs, your adjectives. The nouns are what are thought of as fringe vocabulary. So nouns are fringe. Everything else is considered core vocabulary. And these little words often, our educators think of them as sight words. There's a lot of overlap, but they make up 80% of what we actually say. Here is a board from Project Core that just highlights some of the core vocabulary words that are out there. So you can see, again, these concepts are fairly abstract because they are the pronouns and the verbs and the adjectives, and they're hard to visually represent. How do we determine what core vocabulary is and what words we're targeting? This was determined by looking at language samples from typically developing kids. And again, another really commonly cited study is that from Banerjee, DiCarlo, and Strickland. And what these researchers did is they looked at the expressive vocabulary of 50 children between the ages of 2 and 3 that were in daycare. And they basically did a language sample, and what they found is that 23 words accounted for 96% of what they said. None of those 23 words were nouns. So oftentimes I hear from individuals, oh, we can't give that student an AAC system. They're just functioning at like a 2-year-old level. Well, a 2-year-old usually is saying these 23 words. And if we look at these 23 words, they are pretty abstract. And how often would we give beginning AAC communicators access to words like this? Typically, we are choosing that fringe vocabulary because we think they're going to understand it better. If we think back to the video of John that we saw, and we look at that transcript of the words that he used, he said, "It was time to eat. I wait and wait. No one there. No one come. I afraid. No one come here to help me eat. I wait more. Here he come and say to me, you don't tell. He bad and mean. He go away. I wait more." How many nouns are in this sentence, are in what he said? It's none. He needed access to those building blocks of language, and he needed exposure to these words in order to stay safe in his environment. So we have an understanding of what core vocabulary is. What Dr. Karen Erickson and the researchers at the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies did is they helped to determine, they had a federal grant to help determine what the academic core vocabulary is. And they did this by looking at those typically developing language samples. And they also took a look at the academic demands for communication within the Common Core State Standards and the essential elements. And they tried to decide and pick words that could be used for a variety of functions and across settings in order to communicate students' knowledge. The words that they came up with are the DLM first 40 words. You can see here they have some suggested ways of pairing these words, but you don't need to teach them in this order. If we look at who, the reason they paired that with she, you, and he is because if you're working on answering a who question, you might need some sort of a pronoun as a referent in order to answer that. So the words kind of go together, but again, you don't need to teach them in that order. This is probably one of my favorite slides in the whole presentation because I don't know how many of you are writing your IEP goals and linking them to either the Common Core State Standards or the essential elements. But really, that's probably what we should be doing. And what the researchers at North Carolina did when they were ranking these words and trying to determine the academic core vocabulary words is they pulled them straight from the Common Core State Standards. So if we look at the first grade speaking and listening essential elements here, we can see that the student would need to communicate confusion or lack of understanding. So saying I don't know or asking for help. So when we are trying to pick core vocabulary words that would be beneficial for our students, we can look right to the essential elements or the state standards, and they can help us in writing our goals and also picking out core vocabulary words that our students would need access to in order to communicate their knowledge. So this is a board from Project Core, and I'm going to click on it and take you guys through the Project Core website a little bit. Part of the grant that Dr. Karen Erickson had with the DLM was to also have some training materials put together so that people could implement core vocabulary very easily. So this is the Project Core website. It is a phenomenal resource. It has professional development materials. It has the core vocabulary boards that you can use. It has research on here. It really is a phenomenal tool. So I just want to walk through a little bit. If we look at the teaching supports and implementation, they have some classroom posters. They have some instructional planning guides. If we look under professional development, they have these different professional development modules. In my district, we really use these to help train our staff. And so, or we can even share them with parents so that they understand what we're doing. Given our distance learning right now, these would be some great coaching materials that you could go over with parents who are trying to implement core vocabulary in their home. And so if you click on a unit, this is module 2, it gives you their learning outcomes. You can do an online self-directed module. This is great if you just want to do some self-learning on your own. You can even take a really easy, quick assessment at the end. And that assessment will let you print off a certificate saying that you did it for continuing ed time. But they also have a whole facilitated module on each one of these. And from there, if you are doing some group trainings in your district, you can have access to everything. They give you access to the handouts. They give you access to the PowerPoint presentation, and then they actually give you access to the video. And so what you would do is you would watch the video. You can download it if you have YouTube linked. So that kind of helps you with that barrier if your district doesn't allow YouTube. But you can play the video. It tells you when to pause it. It's very interactive. There's activities that you do within each module, and it's just a really great training material. It tells you exactly, like if we look at the facilitator's guide, it will tell you exactly what you need to say in order to conduct the training in your district. I'm just going to see if I can find. So it tells you the materials you need. It tells you it has an agenda. It tells you what to play. It tells you exactly what to say. So you might say, welcome everyone. Today we will be discussing universal core vocabulary, which is composed of a small number of powerful words that can be used frequently and apply to all subjects, topics, and environment. So it's really interactive. And if you don't want to get up in front of everybody, you can just, again, play that video link for the online self-directed module as well. So you have a lot of resources right here within Project Core. If we look at the Universal Core tab, they have a Universal Core selection tool to help you determine which format to use. They have 3D printed symbols. In our district, we work with our technology education or tech ed department who has access to 3D printing, and they print these for us, and then we can give them to our students. They have a variety of different boards that you can use. So you've seen me put the 36 location Universal Core board in the presentation. This 4-square Universal Core board would be used for somebody, you would turn the page and it would be used for somebody who has maybe fine motor issues. The 9 location, again, maybe somebody who has fine motor issues. The 4 inline Universal Core would be you scanning through the words. So if you see the picture on the screen, it's like, want, not, go. I would scan through those auditorily and somebody would somehow indicate to me that yes, that is the word that they want. And they even have some eye gaze options as well. So the tools are all right here for you to use to begin implementing in your district, and it's all based on research. It's all evidence-based, and it's been a federal project, federal grant that they've had to develop all these materials, and I just can't sing its praises enough. And that's just a link to the evidence, which you can also find on the Project Core website.